Hello everyone, and sorry for the background noise. I saw a friend of mine, MxRosebud.
Sorry, Editor Rose here. It's pronounced MxRosebud. I don't know how many times I have to tell you. Peace and love. Back to the video.
They're also editing this and doing the gameplay. I just wanted to put that out there. They posted a video about their experience with being queer and stuff like that and where we live. I don't live exactly where Rose lives, but we're like very, very close to each other. The definition of abuse, to my understanding, I am a psychology student, but the definition of abuse that I've always been taught is someone doing something towards you that makes you feel uncomfortable on purpose. There are a multitude of different types of abuse that we'll go into. One is, of course, physical abuse. Then there's mental abuse, emotional abuse, and, of course, sexual abuse. We're going to get into the difference between all of them soon. Don't worry, but I want to go back because this is also telling my story at the same time. I am trans. Some people in my life know, in my personal life and my real life know that I am trans, but a lot of my family doesn't. And that's going to be a whole nother video about the effects of trans people in different areas and how that works. But specifically, I want to bring out of the reason I say this is I didn't realize I was trans, and this is the same thing for if I want Rose to link in their video of them talking about their relationship and their past with being queer, and where we live below, so you can go and watch that yourself. But I'll do a little synopsis of what Rose said.
I was very homophobic to others. I was very homophobic to myself. And I was very one of those deeply Republicans.
It was more of a paraphrase, but basically what Rose said. And I very much deeply admit that to myself as well, because I was very homophobic to others. I was very like, I cannot be gay. I was very Christian, even though I'm not now. I was very like the person of like, I can never be gay. I can never be trans. That's disgusting. That's against God's plan, which I'm not dissing Christianity at all, but that's how my mindset was. And then mental abuse. I'm not going to put names into this. I will never like expose someone outright unless something comes up. I will never tell names. So this is all going to be fake names. We are going to call it with Kyle. This is not his real name, but we're going to call him this for now. Kyle and I were friends for a long time, but it wasn't a healthy friendship. He was very abusive mentally, and it was just, he was a very, very bad person. And I want to bring this up because we were also online friends. I was about 13 maybe when we met. 13, yeah, about 13, 12, 13. We met on Discord. And I bring this up as we're speaking a whole overview of this about this is all about mental health. The overview of this is that if you are on the internet at a young age, you are probably going to be hunted and preyed. And I don't mean that to scare people. I could probably say this in a better way, but what I mean by this is people out there are bad. And yes, you can be abused in your real life, and it happens a lot more than what people think. I mean, where I'm from, it's like 86% of children are abused in their household. And the main reasons people are abused is frustration, anger. They don't know how to control their anger, and they don't know how to control their emotions, or alcoholism, or like substance abuse. With Kyle, he had a lot of problems of his own, and that's his fault, but it was a lot. I'm not going to get into detail because I don't want to scare people, but he was very mentally abusive to me and to a lot of our friends at the time. I'm not going to say names again. We're not going to give names out. We also found that he did a whole bunch of bad things that I will not bring up into this video, but because it's not the point of the video. I want to bring that up is because one of the biggest outsets of abuse comes from friendships. And I'll give you the statistics. So this is from healthline.com. I mean, it's not the most reliable source. I won't put that out there, but it's basic. It was one of the good sources I can find. I'll read you a little quote here. Stats have shown that for 8% of people who experience verbal or physical bullying, the aggressor usually turns out to be a close friend. End quote. And here's another quote coming from them as well. Open quote. Sometimes the signs are clear as day, and sometimes you might feel like you're making the situation up in your head. End quote. Open. And here's another one going for further. Open quote. Since tension between friends can sometimes be high, oftentimes you can feel like the abuse isn't real. End quote. 8%. And that might not sound like a lot to some people, but that is, even 8%, that's a lot of people in this world who have been abused by a friend. I am one of the victims. I've been online since I was probably 12, 13. So I want to ask another question of what is abuse? I'm going to give you the actual definition of abuse and abusers. Abuse, as it is said for Merriam-Webster, is a corrupt practice or custom. That's one of the definitions. But the one I really want to get us to is to put to a wrong or improper use, or to use or treat so as to injure or damage. A language that condemns or vilifies, usually unjust, and temporarily and angrily. Physical maltreatment. Those are kind of like the definitions of abuse from Merriam-Webster. And the reason I put this out is a lot of people just think, oh, physical abuse. It very much, there are people who are physically abused. I'm not saying there are not. But we've got so caught up on thinking about physical abuse as the only type of abuse that we kind of like glide over all of the other types of abuse. I mean, of course, there's sexual abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse, and then there's physical abuse, of course. Now we're going to get into the definitions of each type of abuse. Of course, starting with physical abuse. By the way, trigger warning, this can get a little bit triggering. I will really, if you do not like hearing about the definitions or what these types are and it triggers you, please leave. I do not want to trigger anyone on this. I'm just here for informational points only and speaking from my own experiences. Okay, cool. Physical abuse. Physical abuse is when someone puts their hands on you in a malpractical or a very angrily way and like hurts you in a very, and they know they're hurting you. Physically, slapping, punching, kicking, throwing something at you, stuff like that. That's physical abuse. And that's what a lot of people think. When you say abuse, a lot of people think of physical abuse. Mental abuse. Now, this one gets wishy-washy with emotional abuse. Mental abuse is when someone hurts you and, like, breaks you mentally down. For example, I'll give you the actual definition of mental abuse. I'll give you also some examples. Mental abuse is the use of threats, verbal insults, and other more subtle tactics to control a person's way of thinking. It's also called psychological abuse. It's another name for it, but basically, as an example, if you're friends with someone, and I'll use an example that I've been through. If you're friends with someone and someone's begging you to get one of their girlfriend to text them, and then making threats of, oh, I will kill myself before this if you don't do this, if they don't talk to me. That's a type of threat. That's psychological abuse. That's mental abuse. And there's 5 stages of mental abuse, as said by the Brighton and Hove Safeguarding Children Partnership.uk. There's 5 types. Emotional abuse. I'm sorry, I'm stumbling over my words. It's very quick. Emotional abuse. Emotional abuse is very much kind of similar to mental abuse. Emotional abuse and mental abuse are very much similar, I'm pretty sure. I want to go back on what I said a little bit earlier. So emotional and mental abuse are both under a psychological abuse. So I apologize if that kind of got a little mixed up. I'm so sorry. I did a little bit more. They're very similar. So I apologize. That is on me. I should have did a little more research into that. I apologize. The signs of psychological abuse, as said by the National Domestic Violence Hotline, or etc. It is some of the examples. Of course, they have some examples, but what is emotional abuse? Emotional abuse includes non-physical behavior that are meant to control, isolate, or frighten you. This may present in romantic relationships as threats, insults, constant monitoring, excessive jealousy, manipulation, humiliation, intimidation, and dismissiveness, among others. Sometimes emotional abuse is more obvious, like a partner yelling at you or calling you names. Other times it can be more subtle, like your partner acting jealous of your friends or not wanting you to hang out with someone of another gender, end quote. But what are the signs of it? I kind of gave you some. It's basically being like, hey, you're so stupid, or do this for me, or I'm going to do this to myself. Stuff like that. That's kind of the signs of emotional/mental abuse. I'm not going to get into sexual abuse. That could be a whole nother video itself. It's too dark to get into on YouTube. So, why am I making this video? I have been through a lot of abuse in my life. With Kyle, specifically, it was very abusive, very emotionally and mentally abusive. There's a lot that happened that I might sometime come out with. It was a really bad time, and it really made me super duper depressed and super duper, like, at the time I wasn't out as trans. I was very much out as gender fluid. I started like looking at if I was trans, and looking at my sexuality and looking who I was, stuff like that. But I didn't really come out as trans at the time. But I wasn't, even when I was coming out as gender fluid, I had a name that I go by now, Katie. I'm not going to say my full name because I don't want people to know that. And I was told, no, you can't do this because I can't handle that. I was always told you can't do this or you can't do that. And at some time, it kind of got like, okay, well, whatever keeps them happy, I'm okay with, because I was really just wanting to have a friend. I mean, they really felt like a friend to me. They felt like they cared, even though they really didn't. And of course, I want to point out something to all of you who are watching this and who could be like, looking at this for like inspiration or like understand, or you're in this type of situation, is that maybe they do care. I'm not going to sit here and say every abuser doesn't, because abuse does sometimes come from being treated as abusive or having the abuser could have been abused. Abusers become abusers. That is psychologically true. Not all the times though. It's not all the times. You're not always going to be abusive. If you're abused doesn't mean, as I was saying, if you're abused doesn't mean you're always going to become an abuser. The reason I made this is I've been really wanting to speak about my experience with this person. And if you've been watching me for a while, you might know who this person is, but I do not want to give out names. I don't want to give out who this person was. I'm not going to give real names out. I believe that, as I said in the beginning of this video, that people need to be told. And I don't like putting my trauma or my experiences out on the internet because I don't like airing things out, as people would say. But this is very important to me. I mean, I am in university for psychology. And at the time, I'm going back into my rant earlier. I just remember what I was talking about. At the time, I was not out as transgender as I am now. I'm not out to everyone in my life, but a lot of people I am. And I was out as gender fluid, and I was always told, you can't use this name, you can't use that, you can't do this, you can't do that, or you do this, or I will do this. And it was very hard on me and my mental health. I wasn't doing well, and this was all during like high school, a little bit of junior high, but mostly high school. I wasn't fully out until beginning of college, like maybe like a little bit into my first semester of college, where I finally came out as transgender. And I kind of went back and forth before that, as like I kind of was like, am I transgender? Am I not? Am I just faking this? We'll get into my first semester and first year of college. That was very hard on me. So with Kyle, it was very emotionally abusive and toxic. I mean, that entire like friend group was very toxic. I'm not going to give out names again. I'm not going to give out situation, and that's not my business to tell unless it's my story, which is my story. This is my story. I want to point out that I'm doing this video for not really, somewhat entertainment, Not really in that way of more of like, oh yeah, I want to make people laugh about this, or I'm using this as like the game views. No, it's entertainment because I'm posting it on YouTube, but it's also awareness. I've always, specifically, even when I was at school, at college, I worked for the counseling offices, and I was very pushy on like doing queer mental health and doing men's mental health, stuff like that, pushing those little places up into like the front light of what I was doing. And if I was doing an event, I was always talking about queer and men's mental health. I would always push that up because I believe a lot of people talk about women's mental health, and I do not say that one's better than the other or one's more important than the other. All mental health is more important. And I do think that, but I also want to make awareness of specifically queer people in the South. I'm from the South. I don't want to specifically say where I'm from, but I'm from the deep, deep, deep South. So I've always been raised in church. I was very Baptist. I was raised as Baptist. And I didn't really, for a long time, I was very, 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 like, toward God. I was always very, like, I used to sleep with the Bible under my pillow because I thought it would lean away from all the bad spirits or the devil or et cetera like that. Then a lot of things happened with Kyle. I'm not going to go into detail. And because I know a lot of people that I'm friends with who were there at that time will watch this. I don't want to trigger them. But a lot of things happened with Kyle. And before that, I was already thinking about, am I Baptist? Am I pagan? And now I'm pagan. I believe in everything. But at the time, I was very, like, religious. And it kind of, living where I am, I'm still here. I still live live very close to my hometown. I am moving, though, soon. Maybe in the next year or so. It really felt like I didn't have anyone who supported me. So when I got someone who supported me, even how bad Kyle or any of them were, it kind of like made me feel like, okay, well, if I lose them, I'll lose my support. I'll lose who I am. I kind of, in junior high, in elementary school, I don't really remember a lot. I was really bullied. I wasn't really the popular kid. I wasn't really like the people I didn't really have friends. I mean, I had a couple of friends who weren't really friends. They were just like there. But I was really bullied a lot in school and out of school by my family because I was very like feminine. I've always acted very feminine. And my home life wasn't the best. I'm not going to get into that. But my home life, especially going to high school, going with everything that was happening with Kyle and everything that was happening with another group of my friends called, let's say, Jerry, and that entire group. We'll get into that in a moment. It was very much tearing down my mental health, and me and my parents really didn't really have the best relationship until recently, after me and one of my exes broke up. We're not going to get into my ex. That's something I want to keep private. I'm sorry, but I don't want to get into that. I want to keep that private, so please don't ask. Okay, so Jerry, we talked about Kyle. We talked about all that. I want to talk about gaslighting and Jerry. Gaslighting is one of the biggest things that manipulators and abusers do. They gaslight you into believing that it's your fault, you do this, and if you don't do this, then there's no point. I was gaslit a lot with Jerry and that group. I'm not going to talk about exactly what happened, but it's gaslighting as a child at the ages of 13. There was all these people around me who were adults, 19, 18, 19, 20, maybe like 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, who I looked up to as role models. And at the time, I was also very, very non-gay. I was very, like, not transgender. I was very much a male. I was very much like, I cannot be gay because it's against God. I was raised like that. And I wasn't never really a bully. I was always bullied myself, so I didn't really bully people. I was always very timid. I really for a while I did let people walk all over me, and that's not healthy. That's another video of like people pleasing. You don't want to people please, but that's a whole nother video, another topic. And with Jerry, it was a lot of mental trauma that happened, psychological trauma, and my psyche broke, very much like broke. And it took me a long time to build that back, because it went from Jerry to Kyle to my ex. And ex, where again, I want to keep that private. With Jerry is more of like a lot more mental abuse as well. And a lot of people are like, oh, you can't be abused online. You very much can. It's still have that same fear of, if I don't do this, they're going to do this to themselves. Because if you care about this person so much and they make you care about them so much, it's very much hard to hear someone say, hey, if you don't do this for me, I'm going to do this to myself. Or you're going to have someone come do this to you. And when you have so much fear, especially at the young age, and it really damaged me so much. And it still has. I'm still healing from it. I went through a lot in my childhood. I won't want to get into that, because that's not the point of this video. But I went through a lot with Kyle and Jerry. And I honestly thought these people were my friends. And I want to say this as a little final statement to people who are listening to this, my viewers. Some of these people, if your friend is treating you like this, first thing I would give you as an ultimatum is to talk to them. Give them, not really an ultimatum, but talk to them, communicate your feelings. And if they do not understand your feelings, how I would tell you, if I was your friend, or if I was the person or if I was your therapist or anything like that, is to, at some point, you need to cut them off. It's best for your mental health. If they're not listening to your boundaries, and if they're not listening to what you say and your feelings, you need to leave. And that's the hardest thing you can do. It was hard for me. It took me so long to leave Kyle. It took me so long to understand that he was a bad person. But it was best for my mental health. And even though a lot happened after Kyle, I'm still healing. I'm still fighting. And one thing I want to tell you is to fight. You can do the best things you want to. I'm still broken. We're all going to be broken at one point. And the thing that makes us different between a broken and healed. Well, let's say this. The one thing that makes us different from broken and damaged is that broken can still be fixed. I'm in college for psychology. I'm going to become a psychiatrist. So I believe that people can be helped and people can change. But one thing is that you can't force other people to change. But you can change yourself. You can look into yourself and see the bad parts and like acknowledge the bad parts and forgive those parts and forgive the actions of your past. Because you can't change the past, but you can change the future. All right. I've been rambling on for too long. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see y'all in the next video. I love you all, and bye-bye.